Hello everybody, I'm Joey and I'm talking into a microphone of questionable quality because I want to talk about video games. A specific video game. Well, I was inspired by looking at some of my old videos. I was just going over some of my old videos and I thought to myself, now is the perfect time to talk about, yeah, you already saw the title of this, C64 Ghostbusters. Well, Ghostbusters for the Commodore 64, but I'll be playing it on a C64 Mini. But, as I said, I was inspired by some of my old videos. From the infinite void of static, the ATARI 2600, Big Bangs to Life, STARMASTER. Alright, so here we are, we're going through space, we're at Red Alert. Red Alert, hostile aliens are around. You better find them. But you know what? Even looking in this manual, I still don't know what the starship looks like that they're trying to portray. One of the great mysteries of this game is, what does your starship look like? Well, this is what my starship looks like. It's the one on the left. The other one is from the universe of Star Control. We could get really sidetracked on some other series. Something I've referenced in my old STARMASTER video, as well as when I talked about ALF for the SEGA Master System, and, you know, even some old videos about Ghostbusters for the SEGA Master System and SEGA Genesis. Talked about how vehicles could be geared up as, well, in the case of the Ghostbusters game, as ghost-busting cars, as Ecto-1. Or in my case, I've been gearing up my Cavaliers for travel into the various worlds of video games. It's, it's something I really liked about, well, Ghostbusters for the Commodore 64, as well as some of the games that were adapted from it for the, well, really the one for the SEGA Master System, is the idea of gearing up a vehicle. In my case, yes, I'm gearing it up for not so much ghost-busting purposes, but the Commodore 64 game was one of the first games, well, actually was the first game that let you do this. The ATARI 2600 version lacks that ability to pick different cars because it's such a scaled down version. And there are various games based on that Commodore 64 and Atari 8-bit computer game. Various games that are based on that, where you gear up your car for ghost busting. But it's the SEGA Master System one that lets you pick various different vehicles, as well as the Commodore 64 original and some of the ones for the Atari 8-bit computers. And that is actually what caused me to go back and look at a video I had uploaded to Instagram in the past of just showing off some C64 video footage from the C64 Mini. And of course, yes, I was also inspired by how many times I referenced gearing up my vehicle with salvaged alien technology to travel into the world of video games.
Now entering glory hole.
So yeah, this time I'm talking about Ghostbusters for the Commodore 64. And yeah, that's my little segue. That's what instigated my inspiration to just take a quick look at an old video I recorded of Ghostbusters for the Commodore 64. So we're scanning the Ghostbusters universe, taking a look at using a Volkswagen Beetle as Ecto-1. I'm actually a really big fan of the Commodore 64 version of Ghostbusters. That and the SEGA Master System versions of the game I really enjoy. Those are games I really loved. And really, I intended to make this a pretty quick video. So yeah, that's really what I'm taking a look at, is gearing up Ecto-1. And the idea of using a compact car, in the case of the Commodore 64 game, a Volkswagen Beetle, as Ecto-1. And of course, that game, the Commodore 64 Ghostbusters game, it inspired future games. Both in the vehicle physics, driving Ecto-1, and how you capture the ghosts. In fact, I find that Pointing both Ghostbusters in the same way gives you the best chance to pin the ghosts between the beam in both the Commodore 64 and Atari 2600 versions of the game. Although some of the other versions of the game, the beams work a little bit different. Some of this footage I recorded for another video that I was intending to edit, which might actually get put out there someday in the near future. And definitely this video game footage from Ghostbusters for the, well, Ghostbusters being played on the C64 Mini was actually just something I made a little Instagram video of. And at the time I was recording just footage from the C64 Mini. It was getting dark, and originally you could see the Commodore 64 Mini sitting next to the television. And as you probably noticed in this video, I don't always just stick a camera at the TV screen to do video footage, in fact, or video capture. In fact, that's not even really doing video capture, that's just a crude substitute for it. But this was just a quick video I made a while back. In fact, I'm not even playing the English version of the game. And this is definitely something I plan to revisit in the future. But yeah, I was just inspired to take a look at, gearing up a compact car as Ecto-1, and really going over and over that detail. So why not move on and talk about other things about this game? Such as the ghostbusting physics. Various versions of the game, by default, you'll almost always manufacture the right equipment to have proton beams. You have to acquire your ghostbusting equipment. You can determine how many traps you carry, whether you have a mini containment unit and things like that. You can gear up your car for directly sucking up ghosts on the road. In fact, you get to pick a compact car. It's a little red car in the SEGA Master System game, or the compact car in the Commodore 64 game is sort of a greenish, bluish Volkswagen Beetle. And you do have to be careful not to cross the proton streams. Now, it is pretty clear that some other games have been inspired by this. Like I said, the Atari 2600 version is a very scaled down version of the game. There are similarities to busting ghosts in the Sega Genesis version of the game. My video capture varies in quality from different methods I have used, as you could tell there. But you gotta pin the ghosts in the particle beams and suck them in the trap. A lot of different versions of this game. Well, the Sega Genesis game is actually a full-blown sequel. And there's also a Ghostbusters 2 for the Sega, or not the Sega, a Ghostbusters 2 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So there are sequels to this Ghostbusters game. But that was just a novelty I really loved, was gearing up the car in the Ghostbusters game. And the footage I just happened to be revisiting was something I made an Instagram video out of, where I geared up a Volkswagen Beetle as Ecto-1. And of course, beating the game is a little different in each version. It's actually, it's although similar to the Atari 2600 version, the Commodore 64 version, which I don't have any footage of it at the moment. The Commodore 64 version, when you beat it, is actually a better version of the Atari 2600 game. It makes a lot more sense, the final game animation. But the Sega game and the Nintendo game, they both give you a really interesting boss battle at the end. Although in the case of the Nintendo game, there's a horrible section where you have to make your way up the stairs, and you need a turbo controller to do it, as opposed to the Sega game, where going up the stairs is actually kind of fun. You get to use your proton pack to blast the ghosts as you encounter them. It's actually really great. And yeah, boss battles are cool. And of course, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man makes an appearance in all these games, including the Sega Genesis sequel. Although he's not the final boss in the Sega Genesis sequel, as you might expect. Battles with Ghosts actually are pretty cool. And of course, I could also talk about the Nintendo Entertainment System version of the game, but of course that's one of the least popular versions of the game for good reason. Though I do like that they outright make you buy the equipment for the proton beams. That just seems more appropriate. Most versions of the game you'll automatically have the proton packs as long as you also are equipped with ghost traps. But anyway, so I've been talking about Ghostbusters and just taking a look at some old video game footage of Ghostbusters. When I originally came up with the idea for these UNIMULTIVERSE bits videos, I wanted to stick into every single video a cross-series sidetrack. Just me deliberately getting sidetracked talking about another series. And then one day I held aloft my plastic power sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" And a Chaos Emerald fell from the sky. And of course, since I started this off talking about STARMASTER, I referenced Big Banging the universe into life, or into existence, or whatever. How about just quickly referencing the fact that you can actually go into the computer information in Star Trek The Next Generation for both the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, and see information on the Proto-Universe event, which is basically the beginnings of a parallel universe overlapping into the existing universe. Yeah, it's just an interesting thought. And while I'm at it, while I'm getting in talking about the origins of space and time, what about the origins of video game consoles? Here's a little clip of me talking about a first generation video game console. The Coleco Telstar Alpha. You can play both the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen, you know. I can play with myself, or if you want to be my second player, you can play with my knob. Come on, play with my knob. It's fun. Okay, yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. Ghostbusters was a great game for the Commodore 64 where you basically deal with the Zool building sucking in cosmic energy that caused for the manifestation of ghosts start appearing, and you use some science fiction equipment to battle ghosts. And I really liked that concept, enjoyed it quite a bit. And it inspired a real cool game for the Sega Master System, and a good sequel in the Sega Genesis. Your mileage from the Nintendo versions may vary. Even the Atari 2600 version of the game was pretty cool. And yeah, this is just me talking about the idea of gearing up Ecto-1 as a compact car, or I should say a compact car as Ecto-1. And I intended to make this video very short, so I'm gonna bring this to an end. It's soon time for me to stop talking into this microphone of questionable quality, and yeah, how about if you actually enjoyed this little look at an old video game, perhaps you might consider checking out some of my other old videos.